Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into some truly counterintuitive and honestly kind of mind-bending insights from Mark Manson's work on meaning, anxiety, and the modern human condition. You know, if you've ever scrolled through your newsfeed and thought, wow, the world is technically better than ever, but somehow everyone seems more stressed out and lost, well, you're in exactly the right place. Let's get right into it. Okay, talk about a record scratch moment. This stark quote perfectly sets up the central paradox we're untangling today. Normally, we think of hope as this purely positive angelic force, right? The thing that keeps us going through the dark times. But here, we're confronted with the pretty jarring idea that hope is actually a double-edged sword. Yes, it drives us forward, but it's also completely tangled up with the conflict and the deep dissatisfaction we see all around us.
So that brings us to a really huge question. Never before in the history of humanity have we had so much material wealth, advanced healthcare, and just instant convenience. I mean, we can literally get our groceries delivered while sitting on the couch streaming a movie from the other side of the planet. And yet, we're going through a massive crisis of meaning. The source material points out that our modern obsession with individualism and consumerism has left this echoing void. We've got all the comforts we could ever conceivably want, but a lot of folks just feel entirely disconnected and fundamentally lost.
Well, to figure out what's going on, we have to look at what's called the uncomfortable truth. This is the stark realization that, on a cosmic scale, we're pretty insignificant. We kind of just imagine our own importance. Now, I know exactly what you're thinking. That sounds absolutely depressing. But actually, as the text argues, it's actively ignoring this truth that causes so much of our anxiety. Facing our cosmic insignificance head-on isn't meant to be a bummer. It's the necessary, exhilarating first step toward real personal freedom. Think about it. If there's no preordained meaning handed down to you from the universe, you get a blank canvas. You get to build authentic, deliberate values entirely for yourself. So if we're the architects of our own meaning, we naturally lean pretty hard on hope to build that future, right? But that brings up a really provocative question. Is hope always a good thing? Society constantly beats this drum of cultivate hope, hold on to it, never let it die. But we really need to pause and challenge that for a second. Just think about the mental gymnastics here. To hope for a better future, you fundamentally have to believe that the right now, the present moment, is flawed, lacking, or even totally unacceptable. Because hope literally requires you to reject current reality, it constantly generates friction and this deep, simmering discontent. You actually can't be purely hopeful and entirely at peace with the present moment at the exact same time. And this is where we see the two totally different faces of hope. On one hand, you've got constructive hope. That's the kind that historically drove profound heroism. It's what fueled Witold Pilecki, a Polish soldier who voluntarily let himself get sent to Auschwitz during World War II just to gather intelligence and organize a resistance. I mean, that is hope driving unfathomable courage. But there's a darker side, destructive hope. When hope goes unchecked and gets tied to rigid ideologies, it devolves into fanaticism. People get so fiercely attached to their grand vision of a better future that they force those values onto everyone else, causing immense conflict and suffering, all for utopia that never actually shows up. So how do we navigate this weird paradox? We have to look inward at how we actually make our choices. Can we just use pure logic and sheer willpower to fix our bad habits and put a lid on destructive hope? We all love to think we're highly rational creatures, basically navigating life like human calculators, right up until we inevitably find ourselves eating an entire pizza at 2 a.m. while putting off a huge project. Yeah, the text totally shatters that illusion. It turns out, relying purely on logic to fix human behavior is basically a myth. Our deepest choices, our daily routines, those sudden impulses we can't explain, they aren't driven by the facts and data we consume. They're driven entirely by how we feel in the moment.
Let's picture this as a two-brain system. You've got your thinking brain, it's rational, logical, calculating, but man, is it slow. Then you've got your feeling brain. It's emotional, intuitive, impulsive, and lightning fast. The uncomfortable reality here is that the feeling brain is the one actually driving the car. The thinking brain is basically just sitting in the passenger seat drawing maps. If you want to make lasting changes in your life, you can't just yell directions from the passenger seat and try to suppress your emotions with hard facts. You've got to develop real emotional intelligence and actually learn to negotiate with that feeling brain.
Now, since our emotions are the ones driving, we naturally swerve toward what feels good, and we run desperately away from what feels bad, which transitions us perfectly to the concept of suffering. Should we try to eliminate all pain and discomfort from our lives? Modern society is practically built from the ground up on this idea. Endless streaming, climate-controlled everything, absolute comfort right at our fingertips. But is this collective obsession with avoiding discomfort actually doing us any favors? Well, surprisingly, the answer is no. Because here's the thing, pain is an inescapable, foundational feature of life. And because our human perception of pain is entirely relative, if we miraculously wipe out all the major existential struggles from our day-to-day lives, our brains don't just sit back and relax. Nope, they just magnify minor, petty inconveniences to fill that exact same void. So trying to dodge pain entirely doesn't make us happier. It just creates a fragile crisis of values. It keeps us emotionally immature, literally crying over spilled coffee like it's a Greek tragedy. So instead of running away, we actually need to lean into it. Willingly diving into the stream of discomfort is what truly builds deep, lasting resilience and character. It provides the necessary friction for real learning to happen. Paradoxically, it's the exact thing that lets us truly appreciate the good times when they do roll around, expanding our whole worldview. Accepting pain as a natural, expected part of the deal is literally how we build true self-efficacy. Okay, so if dodging pain isn't the point and actually makes us weaker, what is the goal? This sets up our next major myth bust about what most of society is relentlessly chasing. We hear it absolutely everywhere, from movies, self-help gurus, well-meaning friends. Just do what makes you happy. But is the pursuit of happiness actually the ultimate goal? Brace yourselves, because this is a massive truth bomb. The pursuit of happiness is a toxic value. It's inherently self-defeating and completely misleading.
Seriously, when you make happiness your main target, it becomes a trap. You're constantly checking your own mood, asking, "Am I happy yet? How about now?" Which, ironically, just makes you miserable. You set yourself up for endless disappointment, usually relying on superficial diversions just to get a quick dopamine fix. The alternative path is recognizing that genuine satisfaction is actually a byproduct. It's not the destination. It happens naturally when you focus on meaning and purpose, when you cultivate a state of flow in what you do, and when you contribute to something way bigger than yourself.
Getting to that point, choosing deep meaning over a quick, fleeting high takes some serious maturity. Think of it as a lifelong developmental journey. We all start out in a childish phase where life is purely about getting immediate pleasure and crying to avoid pain. Then, as we grow, we enter the adolescent phase. This is highly transactional. It's like, I'll do you a favor if you do me one, or I'll eat a salad today so I can crush 3 margaritas tonight. But the ultimate goal of human development is reaching the adult phase. And that means acting entirely on principles and values, regardless of whether there's a gold star or a punishment waiting for you at the end. To really nail down what this adult stage looks like, the text brings in philosopher Immanuel Kant. His incredibly powerful formula of humanity states that we have to treat people, and hey, that includes ourselves, as an end in themselves, never just as a means to get something else. True adulthood means doing the right thing, unconditionally, just for its own sake. You don't tell the truth because it somehow benefits your reputation. You tell the truth because honesty is the right thing to do. Even if it stings today, honesty and respect are still the right choices. Full stop. And this brings us right to the climax of today's explainer. If being a fully realized adult means voluntarily sticking to these hard, unyielding principles, what about freedom? In a modern world bursting with literally endless choices, where to live, who to date, what to binge watch, what to buy, does true freedom actually mean having absolutely zero constraints? Well, here it is, the final, mind-bending paradox we are unpacking today. True freedom equals self-limitation. True freedom isn't about the absence of boundaries. It's about having the quiet, confident power to consciously choose your own boundaries. Without any structure at all, we just freeze up. It's the classic paradox of choice. We endlessly scroll through streaming menus for an hour and then just go to sleep. But by voluntarily imposing limits on ourselves, we paradoxically expand our capacity for deep, meaningful fulfillment in our day-to-day lives. Let's look at how this plays out in real life. Committing to a marriage means saying no to other relationships, sure, but it creates a depth of intimacy and shared history you just can't get by constantly swiping on apps. Choosing a specific career path definitely limits your options right now, but it paves the way for undeniable mastery 10 years down the line. Sticking to ethics and strict daily routines definitely limits your impulse to just goof off, but it forcefully focuses your finite energy on what actually matters to you. Which brings us to our final lingering thought. The uncomfortable truth tells us the universe isn't going to just hand you a shiny, prepackaged purpose on a silver platter. Pain is totally inevitable. And that fast-moving feeling brain, it's always going to try to talk you into cheap, easy comfort. But armed with this knowledge, you have the ultimate freedom. You get to define your boundaries. You get to decide what is actually worth suffering for. So as you go about your week, I leave you with this pivotal question to ponder. How will you consciously choose your own struggles?